Mr. Speaker, I come to enjoin the debate on the 2022 budget and to give my unequivocal support to its passage. And in so doing, also I want to congratulate Dr. Ashley Kumar Singh and his team for the diligent work that he has done with his team to bring this budget to the House. I also want to congratulate and thank the members, the staff of the ministry, the PS May Thomas, and all other staff who worked very hard to bring the data, the information, over many long hours in respect of fashioning the budget of the Ministry of Home Affairs. Mr. Speaker, I have to point out that every time Dr. Singh brings a budget to this House, it has always been bigger and better. And particularly at this time, with the advent of the oil and gas revenue, and with the return of the PPPC to government, we have the finances of our country, again in safe, reliable, and incorruptible hands. And I would say that the guidance of the President, the Prime Minister, and the Vice President and ministers of the government in giving information and consultation of this budget is invaluable when you read it and when you look at the data, the interventions, and the measures in the budget. Mr. Speaker, it is indeed regrettable that Dr. Singh's predecessor in the office of the Ministry of Finance brought the management of the finances of this country into a ruinous state. By comparison, that beyond the imposition of negative and regressive taxes, overseeing the closure of sugar estates, the throttling of rice and malicious attacks on forest investment, bauxite and other mineral development to the detriment of the economy, and the social and economic well-being of thousands of Guyanese of every race, ethnicity, and social and economic status. That foreign minister of finance has earned the unenviable reputation of the only one in the Western Hemisphere, the only one in the Western Hemisphere who have overseen the deliberate dismantling of a vibrant economy in the shortest possible time. No earthquake, no flood, no tsunami, no volcanic eruption was required, or even a war was required to bring our country and its finances to the state that we met when we returned to power in this country. Mr. Speaker, all the experts in the Granger administration, the absentee leader of the APF, the UAFC in that time, Granger himself, including our member Kemraj Ramachan, a relic of that administration, could not, along with other flotsam and jetsam, worked at creating, did not object, did not have any position, did not weigh in on the positive impacts, the positive interventions of doing the right thing for the Guyanese people and its economy in their time in office. And perhaps naturally, Mr. Speaker, it is indeed regrettable the former ministers of finance's actions in government are attracting the attention of the specialized organized crime unit. Mr. Speaker, I want to try to deal with some of the utterances done by the shadow of the Minister of the Ministry of Home Affairs, the Honorable Geeta Chandan Edmond. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable lady stood here and spoke about setting up an inter-ministerial committee on security. The Honorable Ministers, perhaps, our shadow minister is completely unaware, perhaps, that there is a National Security Council, that there are committees at the top level of the government which deal with the national security of the country. Completely unaware. And nobody, including the Honorable Member Ramjatan, could have informed her at any point in time in respect of that simple fact. And it is strange too that the Honorable Member is suggesting an inter-ministerial committee for national security. I thought perhaps that she would have recommended participation of the APNU AFC in issues of national security. But I want to say to the Honorable Member that the APNU was invited to join with us on the National Commission of Law and Order, and I hope that she would be there where we could discuss some of the issues she has concerns about in more intimate circumstances. And the Honorable Member, I'm disappointed when she speaks on these issues. In fact, I'm forced to think perhaps that I need to reimagine the Honorable Member. The Honorable Member has railed against issues of cybersecurity for an act which they put in place. About cybercrime, the Honorable Member is avoiding the issue of cybercrime and not wanting to recognize cybercrime as cybercrime when persons affiliated with the AP and New AFC are delinquent in respect of those issues. The Honorable Member has come here to this House irrespective of the information which is public knowledge and suggested and said that she is aware of great disaffection in the discipline services. I would want to remind the Honorable Member or to inform her if she is completely unaware that it is the interventions of the AP and New AFC in respect of actions of certain members of the discipline services which brought this country to a point where we would have gone the slippery slope of destruction, where members of the police forces and some other members were involved in aiding and abetting the rigging, of elections, assaulting members of the opposition and others, and creating an environment which is unsafe, fearful, and extremely insecure for all the people of this country, even for their own supporters. And it had to be with the intervention and the supervision of international community, the CARICOM team, over a long recon period to make sure Guyana was brought back on the correct path of democracy, safety, and security for each and every one of our Guyanese people. But here it is, lots of rhetoric about these things of safety and security, lots of rhetoric about crime and poverty. And yes, of course, there's a link between crime and poverty. But how is it now, perhaps looking at the statistics, that we are aware that one of the regions which has great difficulties and the lowest improvement in terms of security is Region 6. Region 6, where the sugar industry was devastated by the APNU AFC in public, supported by Honorable Member Kemraj Ramjatan. 7,000 workers went home without a daily bread, and multiply that by 4 or 5 families, and we can understand why Region 6 has made the least improvement in terms of security. But here it is, they can come to this house and brass-faced speak about poverty, the association between poverty and crime. And they don't understand or don't make the connection between the growing of marijuana on the Kanji Creek and on the Berbice River as a result of the destruction of the sugar industry. They don't make the connection between the encouragement they gave to the blocking of the Berbice River to prevent the bauxite shipments coming down to the transshipment at Crab Island. 1,000 workers went home without a job. And these persons, honorable members, by convention of the House, of course, come here and want to lecture us and speak about how good they were at these things and how bad we are in even proposing measures to change the situation which we found when we come. Mr. Speaker, the gentlemen, the honorable gentlemen and women have to take stock of what they say and the impacts of what they say. If it is they go to New York and go on a stand and participate with people who will say, Georgetown will burn down. Georgetown will burn down if the PPP don't come out of power. And here they come and talk about me perhaps going out when there's a fire to try to encourage people to do a better professional job. Here it is, they want inquiries into the arson of the Brigdan police station, which has forced us to spend as a beginning, as a first tranche, $400 million to build a new multi-story, multi-level, modern facility. But we wish we would have had that $400 million to spend on other things for our security in the country, rather than having now to build that facility. But we will do it. We will do it. Mr. Speaker, it is really regrettable that the honorable members, most of them, mostly with the exception of the Deputy Speaker, would stand up here and make presentations of the kind that they make and continue to make exhibits of themselves in this house. They talk about crime. We talk about their efforts to steal the elections. We had the most recent disgrace in this house, where to prevent the passage of the National Resource Fund bill They stole the mace, nearly decapitated the speaker, broke the mace, and they did that not only here, but they did it here, live, direct, virtual, in the face of a national audience and an international audience, to the disgrace of the country, to the disgrace of our country. And where they could sit and skin teeth and catcall in this honorable house. But the reason that they behave like this, Mr. Speaker, the reason that they behave like this is because they are all essentially joined up in the PNCR. And the PNCR has had a history of violence. And the PNCR, once you join with them, seemingly you are unable, Mr. Speaker, if I am to answer that person over there, we might get an altercation, physical, in this house. Mr. Speaker, this is the way they behave. They can't change. It's in their DNA. It's in their DNA. They can't change. Violence, insults, vulgarity. That's what you represent in the floor of this house. For our country. For our country. And when we talk about one nation, one Guyana, and unity, what we have to fight against to bring this country to the position where it could move forward, in the new environment, where we have the proceeds from oil and gas. We have to make sure that, as was said by other speakers from this side of the house, that they never come back to power in this country. Never come back to power. Mr. Speaker, because you stole the 2015 elections, you started rigging since then. Mr. Speaker, I want to recall the efforts over successful PVPC governments to pursue the eventual discovery of oil during a time when there was much skepticism, derision, and laughter in some quarters, while the Guyanese people as a whole kept quiet but fervent hope and faith in wishing success to the endeavors. While President Janet Jagan, as Minister of Petroleum, determined and signed the first exploration agreements with ESSO Exploration, the PNC was busy on Vlissingen Road, walking Punshi, and ramping up illegal protests and other activities, which went well into the Jagdeo administration, leading to politically inspired murder, riots, and mayhem over practically all of Guyana, with tragic results, and which led to much lesser development that we could have hoped for. And in spite of all the efforts, to the contrary, and the lack of interest in consulting, oil was discovered in 2015 under the Ramatar PVPC administration. And what did the opposition PNC say then? They said it was an elections gimmick, that oil was not found.
Yes, I remember the story. This guy
they have never had the profound understanding of the real care or interest required in the implications of the discovery, nor in the importance of preparing Guyana for the discovery of oil. And their 5 years which they misspent in office has resulted in our being much less than prepared than we should have been now that the industry has been realized and is on the go. And so while they reveled in the trappings of office and took flight to Texas and jet-setted to various Caribbean islands, the diligence in making agreements and in positioning Guyana to optimize its participation in the new industry failed miserably. Now finally out of office, they pontificate as experts. Their mouths roll with oil and oil. And their only interest here, because they don't want to have us. They don't want us to benefit from the development of the oil and gas discovery. They don't even want us to pass a National Resource Fund Act. And so, the antics in this House, the violence which took place when they tried to steal the maize, when they attempted to steal the maize, all was an exhibition in retrogression, in backwardness, in insults, and in their real interest in the zero-sum game, which I've spoken about before in respect of their attitude with respect to Guyana's development. And so, when these things happen, we need to paraphrase Brutus. What was said of Brutus in Caesars, Shakespeare's Caesars, the fault is both in your stars and yourselves. And the only recommendation I could give to the young people who can be saved over there is to exit and leave that coalition, that wreck of a party, that you still have time to depart from them and to make a good, positive contribution to our country. And I could speak about it because I've worked as a geologist, exploring for oil, working in bauxite, in gold. I've been the Commissioner of Geology and Mines, the chairman of the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission. I signed with President Janet Jagan the first exploration agreement with ESO, and I can speak of these things. And I can say now that I feel a great sense of personal vindication when we see the landscape of Guyana changing right now in Georgetown, on the East Bank, all over the country in respect of the oil development and other developments. I don't know what any one of you could speak of over there. I don't know what you can speak of over there. The Honorable Member Henry stood up here in this House and said that the Wapishana were not consulted on the road. And I am aware that there was a social and economic study linked to the Mott MacDonald feasibility study for that road, where consultations were held with the communities, both the Makushi and the Wapishana in the south. And the Honorable Member also stood up here and said The Milo Falls project, which I worked on as Minister of Public Works, and which the APNU AFC shut down, which would have brought cheap power to the first place in Guyana, which has the greatest support for the APNU AFC. Linden would have made power cheaper there, would have brought energy and development there, and they shut it down. Zero-sum game. And the Honorable Member Henry says that the water dry at some times and the water trickling over the falls. Well, even the great Gurilam in Venezuela had to be shut down some years ago because of an extensive drought. And when we are wet in Guyana, it's dry in Brazil, which is why we have the opportunity to export power to Brazil from Tortuga in the upper Mazaruni when we get that development. And that one would expect that if you have a dam that is managed, you will have water to run and manage power delivery up to 165 megawatts from a Milo Falls. But, Mr. Speaker, those who are wedded to a zero-sum game, do not have the ability to work, to make the kind of contribution to take the country forward. So let us have the kind of discourse which will take the country forward. Mr. Speaker, some persons, some NGOs recently had a forum, Moray House, where they talked about, I can talk about many things, I don't know what you could talk about. That's why he's not in the work. Moray House Forum spoke. Mr. Speaker, I leave that for another thing, because when firearms were being sold from the office of the Minister of Public Security, that was destabilizing of the country and makes things difficult for us. That's the game you're in. I am speaking what the facts are. Mr. Speaker, I have to report quickly on the issue of security and the work of the ministry, that in spite of all that has been said in Guyana, serious crime has been reduced by 20%. Serious crime has been reduced by 20%. The instance of fires has been reduced by 30%. What is different now is that there are arson attacks on government buildings, particularly police stations. Mr. Speaker, for the first time in more than 16 years, road deaths have dropped below 100 in Guyana. And while we make mention of that fact, I have to say that, of course, we at the ministry are distressed, and I am personally distressed at the accident at the Mahaika Bridge yesterday. And of course, we want to pass on our condolences to the family of Sharida Prasad, Christopher Bagbandat, who died, and also wish Constables Tucker, Sam, and Johnson a speedy recovery. And that this incident and the requisite reviews will be done in respect of that matter.
Honorable Minister, while we review that, we will take an extension to you.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask for the honourable member to have 5 members to conclude his presentation.
Thank you, Minister Teixeira. Honorable Minister, you may continue
Mr.
and
Speaker,
conclude in 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, during the time of the past Minister of Public Security, now exiting the room, maybe he's going to make a contribution at the ablutions area. I want to suggest that he doesn't flush because he might disappear. Because in his time, from the period 2017 to 2020, 36,000 persons passed through Guyana. 94% of all who arrived from a particular country and disappeared. And when we talk about people smuggling and trafficking in persons, we have to look at these statistics. For another set of people, 35,000 people, 87% of all who arrived in the country between 2017 and 2020, yes, disappeared, cannot be accounted for. And one would want perhaps to deny that there wasn't an organized smuggling network being run by persons at the highest level in the APNU-AFC regime, overseen by Honorable Member Kemraj Ramjatan.
Honorable Minister, you may want to withdraw that because it's imputing on the honorable member.
Just to say, I was moving on the fact that the gentleman was responsible for the sector and receives the same statistics I received, but I...
Yeah, Honorable Minister, basically what I heard was a smuggler ring overseen by. So please, thank you.
Presided over perhaps is a better word. Mr. Speaker, we have had great effort by other agencies of the ministry in respect of the fight against narco trafficking, firearms, illegal firearms, and in respect of making cases by the SOCU, where at this moment there are 77 cases totaling $75 million, which are up for referral to the courts, and another $4.3 billion in respect of money laundering cases, which are going to be referred to the courts. Mr. Speaker, I want to quickly speak about an initiative coming from the ministry in respect of helping persons who exit the prisons re-enter normal life with the ability to take care of themselves and in reintegrating with their families. And so, in an overall program calling Increasing the Peace in Guyana, we are looking amongst many of the measures in having a fresh start for prisoners, having them trained, having them been given the tools to start out to relaunch activities, because we have all kinds of craftsmen and professions in the prisons, and we want to reduce the level of recidivism in the prisons, which are at 13% overall and 9% for first-time offenders. But importantly, as I said before at some time in this House, if we're going to have peace in Guyana, it has to start from the floor of this House. And it has to start from democratic, polite exchange with those who are elected to this honorable house, on all sides of the house. And we need full partnership and better understanding of the initiatives which are being proposed by the government, by the honorable member Ashley Singh, in respect of pulling us out of poverty and passing on a better, viable, and more secure life to the new generation of Guyanese who will replace us. And we have a responsibility to pass on that better life to the next generations. But, Mr. Speaker, this wouldn't happen if we continue with this type of behavior. It wouldn't happen if we have the type of presentations, the naysayers, the zero-sum game from the other side. It wouldn't happen if they really can't come up with a leader. Mr. Speaker, yes, I know that you are grateful and happy that my time is up. I will, in any event, keep passing on this message. I know you don't want to hear us. I know your only interest was in barbershop chairs. And you want to come and talk here about security and crime. Mr. Speaker, we need to take a national pause. We need to have some retrospection and introspection on the question of how we go forward in Guyana. And while we wait for it, but we can't wait too long, we have to move ahead. We want to here and now commend this budget to this honorable house for rapid, quick, and emphatic consideration and passage. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.